It's not unusual to hear of pieces of art going for millions of dollars at a Christie's auction. But what about a piece of art you'll never be able to hang on your wall for $69 million? dollars? NFTs are digital assets stamped with unique codes, and if you haven't heard the buzz over the past few weeks, you're about to. NFTs, or non fungible tokens, are a big thing, and it's not just digital art we're talking about. Aaron Solomon is a senior digital strategist for nextlevel.com and adjunct professor of business management at McGill University, here to help us sort it all out. Thanks so much, Aaron.
It's great to be here, Sharon. Thanks for having me.
These digital collectibles are taking the tech world by storm. But when it comes to tech, cryptocurrency, blockchain, a lot of us, including me, are still in the dark. So, non fungible tokens basically means irreplaceable. Let's start there. What's an NFT? Where did they originate and what makes them unique?
You're right. When we talk about NFTs and we talk about the term non-fungible, the easiest way to explain it is to first talk about fungibility. So here's something that's fungible. Imagine if I give you, and it's funny, in Canada, I'm thinking of a $100 bill. So few people accept $100 bills anymore. Nonetheless, let's play with it. If I give you a $100 bill, you're fine if I gave you 10 tens. That's fungibility. There's a good replacement for that $100 bill, which can be 5 20s or 10 tens. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are the exact opposite. They're non-fungible. So if we look at something like, and I've spent a ton of time, I've lived in Europe until recently, I've gone to the museums in Amsterdam. So one of them is, there's tons of Van Goghs. When you see a Van Gogh, it's non-fungible because you can't replace it with 1 or 10 photocopies of a Kodak picture of a Van Gogh. And when you exit through the bookstore and they try to sell you the Van Gogh prints, the print that they sell you in Amsterdam doesn't have the same value as a Van Gogh. So even if we talk about traditional art, in that sense, that traditional art is non-fungible because there isn't a good replacement. And that's the basis for the nomenclature of an NFT, a non-fungible token. The difference being, of course, that we're going to be talking about tokens that exist in the blockchain rather than the Van Gogh that exists in a museum in Amsterdam.
So, an NFT can basically be anything digital and exist only in the digital realm. And perhaps it's best to start with that $69 million piece of art by digital artist Beeple.
Yes, and Beeple was as surprised as anybody. So Christie's did an NFT auction. And at least for the people who aren't really deep into tech, I think the fact that Christie's recently did this NFT auction gives it a lot of credence because Christie's is obviously accepted in the traditional art world as being one of the great auction houses and dealers. So they did this auction, and this artist named Beeple sold an NFT for close to 70 million US dollars. Now, interestingly, I also watched on YouTube very recently something called an unboxing. An unboxing is when people get stuff and they go on YouTube and they literally unbox it, they open it. It was somebody else who bought a Beeple. It wasn't the $69 million one. And the person unboxed it. Now you're probably thinking, wait a second, I thought an NFT didn't really exist. You couldn't hang it on the wall. But because people are still very attached to these physical things, what Beeple did is create a beautiful box set for this other NFT in issue. Anybody can find it by just going on YouTube saying unboxing Beeple. And what this did was give a little thing you can plug into your computer where you could actually see an image of your NFT, very much like you would plug in one of these digital frames and you could see pictures of your cousins or other relatives. So that was kind of neat.
So, NFTs originated with the Ethereum cryptocurrencies, correct?
Ether, yes.
Ethereum, yes. And so how do the NFTs fit in? Where does the buying and selling take place?
That's a really good question. So first of all, NFTs exist on the blockchain. So the short answer, and we're going to do this for dummies and for experts too. I'll give the dummies answer. The short answer is NFTs exist on the internet rather than in a physical store. Here's the more detailed answer. We won't get into this for long, but for those who follow NFTs, the more detailed answer is that NFTs exist on ERC 721, which is a protocol on the Ethereum blockchain that you just mentioned. So these are tokens. The best way to think of an NFT is imagine an engraving on a chain of blocks. So the information for the NFT is inside this block in the transaction. So I know that was a little bit more than kind of NFTs for dummies, but I think it's important to understand that they exist on the blockchain, which is a chain of blocks on the internet.
That's not really an easy concept to grasp. And anything digital, when you think about it, as you said, can be copied or duplicated. So let's look at music. The Kings of Leon were the first out of the gate to release an album in the form of an NFT. But an album is an album. So where does that irreplaceable aspect come in? Why would they release it this way? And is it about engagement or more revenue?
I'm going to give an example that the old people like me are going to relate to. When I was a little kid growing up in Montreal, one of my favorite bands was Styx. And Styx released their album Pieces of Eight, I believe it was, with a very limited edition see-through gold album. It obviously wasn't real gold. As a little kid, having all these black colored albums, when I got that gold album, I thought it was one of the coolest things ever. And it's really the same thing when you think about the uniqueness of an NFT. That's really an important thing. So yes, NFTs can be copied and digital tokens can be copied, but because of the blockchain, there's always proof that you can have an original. So if you think about my background here, which is this Pop-Tart Cats, which was one of the original NFTs, and it's a piece of art that's been out for a while. I mean, you can find this anywhere on the internet. But if you had the certification that you were the owner of this NFT, and let's say it was a very limited run, maybe one of one, maybe one of 10, then you could be the person who said, I am the owner of this, and everybody else is copying it. There's lots of copies and lots of prints of the Mona Lisa, but I've also seen it in the Louvre, and it's not the same thing.
So, do you think it's about engagement? Is it about looking for different revenue streams? Is it a little bit of both?
That's a great question. It really is a lot of everything. So let's like dive specifically into one type of an NFT. So anybody who is a sneakerhead like me, sneakerhead is a sneaker collector, I've been to sneakers my whole life, probably heard that recently Gucci released a sneaker as an NFT. So people right now must be saying, sneaker is an NFT, well, how do you wear it? Well, you don't wear it. You obviously can't wear a physical sneaker that's an NFT because it's not physical. But your avatar on Twitter could wear it, or you could display it as a tweet, but you would actually purchase this digital sneaker released by Gucci. So I want to get a little bit more into this for a second, because people are probably thinking, that's like super weird. Why would you want to do that? And I want to give a quick little example. I was living for the past 4 years in Berlin, even though I'm a Canadian. And the year that I got to Berlin, Berlin Transit Authority, called the BVG, released a sneaker, a physical sneaker, in collaboration with Adidas, which is headquartered in Berlin. And it was such a cool concept. If you wore this sneaker, you could ride on Berlin public transit free for an entire year, because there was a reader inside the sneaker that acted as a year-long pass. So let's think about this for a second. The value of the sneaker would, at a minimum, be the value of that year-long pass, and that's what the sneaker was priced at. The second this sneaker went on sale, it sold out, and people were listing it on the gray market for up to 100 times the cost of the sneaker. So even though you might not physically wear it for that purpose because you didn't live in Berlin, it only worked in Berlin, you would want this physical sneaker as a collectible. It's no different with an NFT. You want an NFT because it's collectible.
Well, moving from sneakers takes us right into the big wide world of sports. The NBA Top Shot out of Vancouver is a leader in this regard, and Toronto Maple Leaf Austin Matthews is poised to launch a collection in the very, very near future. It made big news yesterday. It's a whole new ball game, so to speak. So you can actually NFT sports moments. How does that work?
So NBA Top Shot, as you mentioned, is a Vancouver company. It was only yesterday that I learned that the Raptors' Kyle Lowry is actually a major investor. This company, Top Shot, which is affiliated with the NBA, so it's a legal NBA product, in its first 6 months made over 400 million Canadian dollars. And the way it works is this. When I was a little kid, I had sports cards. I'm sure that a lot of people watching this had sports cards as well. Top Shot allows you to take essentially, it's the next generation of sports collectibles. It allows you to acquire a digital highlight of your favorite player. For example, maybe Kyle Lowry going through 4 or 5 players and taking a layup. So that's what it does. It's basically a sports collectible. Austin Matthews yesterday announced that he's creating an NFT called Papi, which was his nickname when he was growing up. It's the same as Drake's nickname as well. And it's going to be for Maple Leafs fans to essentially have digital collectible of one of the rising stars of the NHL.
Well, given all of this, there is still no lack of naysayers out there. There's lots of negative shots being taken at NFTs on social media, and there's criticism as well for its enormous environmental footprint. What do you think? Is this the future of collecting? Are NFTs here to stay, or is this a flash in the pan?
It's absolutely not a flash in the pan. NFTs are going to get so huge compared to where they are today. And let me give you a concrete example again as to why I think this will happen. So one of my favorite bands of all time was the Eagles. And back in the 70s, when the Eagles needed a photograph for their first album, they went into the desert with their photographer and they got that iconic photograph. Imagine the same thing happening today with a band. That photograph could be released as an NFT. It would be, if the band made it big, a highly, highly valued piece of digital art. So digital things aren't going to go away and digital art isn't going to go away. Now, the naysayers aren't incorrect either. First of all, this exists on the blockchain, as I've mentioned. And mining for Ethereum, mining for cryptocurrency, and doing things in the blockchain has a very serious environmental footprint. And I don't think you can minimize that at all. And there's also the element of naysayers saying, well, it's easy to get ripped off. True, but trust me, it's easy to get ripped off if you're a sneaker collector. You can get fake sneakers. If you're a watch collector, or if you collect things like Supreme, one of the great street brands, which actually copied other brands and everybody copies Supreme. So I think that if we older people can divorce ourselves from this notion that everything has to be unique and authentic, there's a lot of us that are going to play in the NFT space and really enjoy it.
So it can be a secure investment, not just for those with cash to burn?
So I think that anything dealing with crypto and anything dealing with the blockchain should be coming out of your disposable income. I'm not going to say to anybody, oh yeah, definitely buy some NFTs and that's going to be your retirement savings. I wouldn't say that. However, supposedly, people who've already invested a lot into NFTs have seen, at least on paper, a lot of return. Also remember that NFTs isn't just about big ticket items. I actually do a lot of work with someone who collects NFTs every day. And they may make a $500 or $600 purchase on an NFT, and it could go up 15 or 20% overnight. That in itself isn't big money, but if you're buying hundreds of NFTs a week, it can certainly add up, and you're essentially hedging your bets like you would in anything that you acquire.
The way of the future. Aaron Solomon, thanks so much for bringing us up to date on NFTs and where they're headed.
Thanks for having me.